Well, you never heard of a professional fade, Trent? What the
Keep you on your toes, man.
You love an abrupt ending. I always wonder, like, how do you and Atticus decide exactly when a song ends at the most inappropriate time?
I think it reaches a point where we've had enough, and then it just has to. That's it.
The song is called Less Than. It is song number 1 on a brand new 5-song EP, which is called Ad Violence, which we're very excited about, which is one of a trilogy of EPs. I'm already confusing issues. We'll get to all of that. But in the meantime, it's great to have new music, and we have Trent Reznor with us right now on Beats1. How are you, Trent?
I'm doing okay.
You know, you must be excited / frantic / stressed and all the things that come with releasing music, with shows coming up as well. Can you give us a little insight into what's keeping you busy at the minute?
Well, I think I'd forgotten how much effort was involved in finishing a record and releasing a record, and at the same time, getting the band back in shape and preparing for a few shows. Our plan had been to do some touring next year and kind of pivot Nine Inch Nails from being a band that tours for a year and a half, 2 years at a time, and then disappears for several years into one that might do, a reasonable amount of shows a year and see how that works for the next bit of time. And that plan was supposed to start next year. And some offers came in, and we all kind of looked at each other without deeply thinking it through and said, let's play some shows this year.
So why that? Why subconsciously do you make that decision as a band to go against what you'd originally decided to do as a spur-of-the-moment thing? What inspires it? The desire to go play them?
It's really just instinct. It seemed like it would be fun. It seemed like when I imagined myself on stage again with the new material that we have to play as well, it seemed like something that felt uncomfortable and it felt exciting. So it was reason enough to do it.
Has it sort of informed the music? I mean, I know that you're very specific about the music that you make and, you immerse yourself completely in it. But then when you add things to the diary and you start probably imagining even subconsciously what it's going to be like to stand in front of 40, 50,000 people again, does that inform a song like Less Than? Because dare I say, that is, as far as me as a Nine Inch Nails fan is concerned, an absolute banger. Does that come from the decision to play live?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, when I'm in record-making mode, I'm really just out to serve that master and pursue that vision and see what happens. And then it usually creates more of a burden when the record's finished and live time comes up as to figuring out how to translate that into a live environment.
But I mean, it's going to sound incredible. I mean, Less Than is one of those moments that I think, in the context of you and an audience and that unique relationship that you have for a couple of hours every night, that one's going to be a moment.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting that to come out that way. The story behind this record is when Atticus and I sat down to, the last couple of years, we've been accumulating ideas and thinking about Nine Inch Nails of what the big statement was, what the next proper album was, while we were doing some score stuff. And rather than drop a big, long, I love the format of an album. I like having 40 minutes to 90 minutes to communicate a grand suite of songs that relate to each other, that have something to say beyond the single song serving. But we were thinking about the amount of time it takes to do that and a bit of awareness about what it's like as a fan with so much choice and so much access to so much music. We thought it might be interesting to split the record up into 3 parts that come out and have their own moment of attention, each of which are stylistically a bit different. And then it tells a singular story. And I think we're going to combine things in a way that makes sense after the 3 EPs are out. So this is part 2 of that. It's been more fun and more inspiring to work that way.
One song out of 5 that appear on a second EP, which is called Ad Violence from the band Nine Inch Nails. That song is called Less Than. It's literally minutes old. It's inside Apple Music and around the world on services right now. And we're talking for the first time about this project with Trent Reznor. So, I mean, like you said before, this trilogy of EPs, of which this is the second, this EP does feel, to me, different. More than slightly. When you finished Not the Actual Events, did you just put that to one side and like, okay, that one's done? Or in some respects, are you making an album kind of in your own way, just in 3 parts? Does it inform the next EP? Do you think, how's that going to do what the last one didn't?
I'll tell you, the blueprint of this suite of records has been starting with the kind of script, the lyrical construct, the world that they sit in, and then really following inspiration in the studio to find out musically what kind of feels inspiring at that time. When we did Not the Actual Events, we were really seduced by the violence of it, the aggression, the kind of throwing hesitation marks out the window and being unafraid to explore approaches we had in the past with a kind of, punch in the face feel to it. And I think that the length of a 5-song EP felt like the right length for that, and to repeat that isn't as exciting anymore. It's like we did that. So now, as we expand the lyrical viewpoint of this 3-song trilogy, the music that was interesting to us this time around kind of surprised us. And Less Than is not entirely representative of where the rest of the EP goes. So this collection of 5 songs feels like brothers. And I have no idea what the last part of this will be. I know lyrically where it goes, but I don't know what it's going to sound like yet.
Well, there's a song on the EP which is called "The Background World," and I mean that to me, the last 8 minutes of that is one of the most sonically destructive experiences I think I've ever had in my life.
It was kind of the opposite of the end of Less Than.
Slowly destroys itself completely. I wonder how, what kind of mind frame you and Atticus are in when you're following that lead and you're letting 11 minutes and 44 seconds of a song end up basically killing itself.
No, really, it just felt like the right thing to do. And again, when we're working, I think why we work so well together is we really, our kind of goals in life are primarily, 1, not to feel bad about ourselves, and 2, we find worthiness in trying to do the very best work we can do. Simple as that. And if other people like it, great. If there's a place for it, that's great. But trying to do something that feels like it was the hardest, most honest version of what you can create is what drives us. Not to sound pretentious, but that is why I still do this and feel excited about it.
Who else is playing on this EP? Who else has been joining you in the studio to help get these songs into a place where you're happy?
This time it was just us. We didn't really run into anything that we didn't need. We had a couple background singers on Less Than. I'm sure one of which, Charlotte, was on tour with us in the Attention tour for Hesitation Marks. But other than that, we really kind of just went into a cave and came out, and this was on the hard drive.
Have you been enjoying it, the experience of making this music? I know it seems strange to suggest the idea of enjoyment or fun when music comes out that's this, intense to listen to. But tucking yourself away in this cave, as you put it, is it the most comfortable place for you to be?
As my personal life has kind of turned into something that actually gives me comfort and a sense of being centered. My role as a father and husband, and not feeling the degree of chaos that I might have felt years earlier. My motivation has shifted a bit, but at the core of it, before, to hide in the studio was a way of the only place I could find any sanctuary, where I could, through intense self-examination, get something that I felt gave me joy, gave me a sense of purpose, And now when I go in the studio, it's not to escape from the world so much, although I do think the outside world, with what seems to be happening, the sanity of the planet, is worrisome, particularly through the eyes of being a father. Going in the studio feels like a way to almost meditation, to connect with a truthfulness, shut the noise down and express how I feel about something in a way that feels purifying in a sense.
You've been sort of warning us of this in some respects through your music and in the way that you put your music out. You've always immersed yourself, I think, in the noise and used it to your advantage, but it's particularly noisy now. And I wonder whether it's almost too noisy for you even, the kind of energy that's coming back at human beings from human beings and, the world we live in. More than ever before, we need opinions, some out front and in others more subtle, but more than ever before, it seems like having an opinion is the most valid path.
Yeah, I can say, I think in general, that the amount of noise and the amount of oversharing and the amount of everybody in the world having a voice and an opinion and the amount of content that seems to be, the amount of distractions, doesn't seem like it's benefiting humanity that much at the end of the day. The thrill of everybody being able to publish and everyone having an opinion, glance some YouTube comments and see if you think that's elevated humanity and intellect in any way. Not really. Not saying that there isn't tons of good things about it, but part of what's the narrative behind this trilogy of records is finding one's place in that new kind of reality that we live in. Or now, even the truth is subjective. It's weird times we're in.
As you move forward deliberately with these EPs, Trent, and with these very deliberate shows that you've chosen, and everything seems to be in the right place, it's fascinating to see the band return, on screen, albeit in a very unique way, with David Lynch and, Mark Frost, Twin Peaks, The Return. Just a few words about that experience, why you chose to do it, how it was, being involved in that, because obviously it was a much talked about return, not only of the show, but ultimately, as you showed up, you as well.
No, I mean, it was a pretty simple process. It was David Lynch calling, saying, "Do you want to be in Twin Peaks?" And me saying yes. It was as simple as that. Twin Peaks, I think, was one of the most important television experience. The original one, I think, is the architect behind a lot of what makes TV so great today. David Lynch as an artist has been, in the very top realm of heroes of mine, inspirations, film and sound and intellect and approach and rule breaking. And, it was incredibly flattering and an honor to even be considered for this. And the experience was magical and excellent. And I didn't know much more about how we were going to appear than anyone else did until that episode aired. And when it did air, it felt like the coolest hour of television I think I've ever seen. The least of which to do with was us being in.
Every time that you guys step out on the road and perform, it's an experience that really hasn't been informed by anything before. And I know how seriously you take the idea of presenting your music, whether it's at its most technologically, advanced, right through to you and the band White Light, White Heat, that band that just played like maybe 5-6 years ago that was just on absolute fire, all the way through to the last tour when, you really deconstructed and reconstructed the whole experience of performing live. And I wonder how things are going now with these shows coming up and whether fans can expect something different altogether again.
Well, it's an interesting point to bring up, and I would say this in general. One of the things that I find to be the most difficult for me, as you get older and you've been doing it for a while, is the tough part at times can be to approach yourself with any sort of objectivity. Have a true perspective of where you are in the spectrum and what the expectations are and how others might see you. And also as how your band is or your music is in the context of what's also happening out in the world, and in the zeitgeist and what people are feeling culturally, relevance. We approach these live shows a bit differently than we had in the past because typically, as I mentioned earlier, when we gear up for a tour, usually a year before the first show, I'm meeting with lighting designers, stage designers, talking about what's up, what feels like the right approach, how do we try to realize that. In the last 3 months or so is intensely rehearsing the band and production rehearsals and trying to hone that vision into what it actually is going to look like. This time, because these shows came up as a unexpected thing to do. Like I said, we were thinking next year we're going to do some shows. And do you want to play a couple shows this summer? Well, we'd have to build it differently. We'd have to think about it differently. And that kind of forced me to really pay attention to take a look at what other people have been doing live. And I think what you're going to see from us this time is it's kind of anti-technology has been the kind of thought behind it.
Oh, I'm excited by the thought of that. I mean, I love it when you work closely with people on a visual level. But I know that I know what kind of band you have. It's a ferocious unit.
Well, we're trying to play to our strengths and also to provide something that feels, there's something special about the live performance. I don't mean just us. The experience of seeing a live act, being in the moment. It's not downloadable. You're there, the anticipation, the disappointment, the overpriced drink, the need to urinate, all those things, the bad live sound. I think a lot of that's turned into the live performances of today have become watching a movie, a kind of overstimulation. It's a arms race for sensory overload.
So you're into reduction right now?
Well, we're into just a applying a different thing, and seeing how that goes. And we might find that it was a terrible idea and we won't repeat that. But it feels exciting and it feels unsafe for us. And it doesn't feel like just doing the same thing we stopped doing last time.
We know there's another third EP coming. You're talking about around 6 months in between. We're around 6 months between now and the end of the year. Would you like to see all 3 EPs out in 2017 so you can contextualize them next year, or is it whenever it's ready? I mean, what's the progress on it? Not to be greedy, but I mean, what can you tell us about EP3?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's 0% done, aside from some lyrics in a notebook. Really, the factors that the main factor would be if it is ready, if it feels like it has fully formed. And the other kind of more controllable aspects of that are at the moment, Atticus and I have caught up with the other things we've done in our side jobs. Vietnam score is coming out for Ken Burns' documentary that drops this fall. And there's a couple of interesting film-related projects that we're considering taking on. If we did, that may play a factor in the time frame of Nine Inch Nails' third EP.
Still documentary based, or are you thinking about getting back into a major film production again at some point?
No, it's not documentary. It's traditional film work. And again, when we think about that, it really is, hey, what feels like it would be cool to work on? Who are cool people we'd like to work with that inspire us and challenge us? And that's what we're kind of weighing out at the moment. And it's also the time commitment of thinking, I want to spend 6 months watching the same movie over and over again.
2018 is already shaping up to be an amazing year for Nine Inch Nails fans. I couldn't be more excited about the idea of what these 3 EPs, what shape they will take as a full-length album, if that even in fact is the case.
I mean, that's kind of the plan right now. I'm interested in the narrative and ways we can prevent that feel provocative, that give songs their due, but set them in a place that gives them another bit of perception.
Well, that's right. And I just think that when I listen to these EPs, both of them now, and I think about what they say to each other, and they are definitely communicating with one another. And then I imagine a third EP coming out, and then I think about, well, what does an album sound like in relation to that? And I think, well, will those songs actually still be that shape? Could they change shape? Could that album be in relation to those 3 EPs, but ultimately be something different altogether, just inspired by still the same songs, maybe sound different, maybe different mixes, maybe a different thing, and maybe we're still in a work in progress?
That's where it is right now. Conceptually, it gets recontextualized, all 3 EPs, into something that in its together feels like something different. It's not just a mishmash shuffle on the iPod, but a different relationship and different versions of the songs. That all depends really on when it all gets finished, when the third EP comes to life. Does that still hold up? I'm sharing kind of the creative process behind it right now.
I know, and I absolutely love it.
That's my secret right there. Wing it and then see if it makes sense at the end, and pretend you had a plan all along.
I wish you told me that was your mentality before you asked me to move to Los Angeles and build a radio station, by the way.
I'll give you a little secret. That's Jimmy's secret as well that we've discussed, he and I, where you just kind of blindly, instinctually follow whatever happens, and then at the end, if it worked, spin the story as if there was a master plan the whole time. See, maybe it was subconscious, and maybe it was purely luck.
It's been lovely to speak with you as always. The EP sounds phenomenal. And good luck with the shows. I mean, at what percentage do you think you are satisfied with the way that the rehearsal is coming together for these shows right now? Give us an insight.
Well, I'm at a secret rehearsal location right now, hidden deep in the valley somewhere. And as I took a break to come in and speak with you, I thought for the first time today it sounded excellent. Not just pretty good, but exciting and goosebump level excellent.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I'm assuming you didn't tell your bandmates that.
No, actually I did, because they've been getting beaten on pretty heavily. So they needed to. Yeah, I'm learning.